Great, Tom. We have everyone, so go ahead and kick us off.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Cochran, the CEO and Executive Director of the one and only United States Conference of Mayors. And I just want to thank you for being with us today for this very important webinar, Empowered Cities, a Roadmap to Inclusion for All. I'm pleased to join for today's session by the great Mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, and the Mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. We will be hearing from each of them about their efforts to ensure that people with disabilities have access to resources and support they need to thrive in their cities. COVID-19 has revealed striking disparities in outcomes for different groups and communities in the United States of America. The divide that already existed prior to the pandemic has been exacerbated for women, people of color, individuals with disabilities, and other groups that have historically been marginalized in the United States. As we emerge from this pandemic, there never has been a more important time for mayors to lead an effort to strengthen diversity, equity, inclusion for all right now. So I'd like to turn it over to the great mayor of the city of New York, Mayor de Blasio. New York City was a founding member along with Chicago for this great organization, United States Conference of Mayors. And Mayor de Blasio will be leading our discussion on the Empowered Cities initiatives. That's a 5-city effort, ladies and gentlemen, to create a roadmap for inclusion for all. Mayor de Blasio.
Thank you so much, Tom. And Tom, I want to thank you and your whole team at the Conference of Mayors. We have all needed each other this year and last year in ways we could not even imagine. It is so clear to me that mayors wouldn't have gotten through and wouldn't have been able to serve our people if it wasn't for the help we got from each other. And the Conference of Mayors really was an anchor for us. So thank you, Tom. I know you believe in this organization deeply, but I think this was one of its finest hours. So thank you very much for your leadership. I want to welcome everyone. This is an important session and one where I think we can really seize the moment, because we have a moment of transformation that is, I think, going to be the greatest of our lifetimes. I will, in a moment, it's been suggested to me it's helpful for some of the folks participating to hear a physical description. So I'm going to do that in a moment, introduce myself with a little narrative, but I want to just say about this moment in history first. I don't know about all of you and the conversations you've had with your family members, particularly the elders in your family. But I remember when I was growing up, hearing stories from folks who went through the Great Depression and went through World War II, and the particular reverence they had for the work of the New Deal and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And what I constantly heard was the recognition that they had lived through a moment in history where all things were possible. And there was an incredible sense of purpose and camaraderie. And then honestly, some of my family admitted to me that after those times, they sought that spirit again and didn't always experience it. And we're in a moment now that forged in crisis, just like the New Deal was forged in the Great Depression. But we're in a moment for profound transformation, a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you ever wondered about those previous generations who did amazing things, we're literally in that moment right now. And the challenge for us is to recognize it. It's strange to know when you're in a historical moment. It's kind of counterintuitive. History is supposed to tell you what you did later on, but we can see the outline so clearly right now. We happen to be leaders at this moment. There's an entirely new consciousness as a result of everything that happened with COVID and the social movements that have come out of it. And there's also, for a shining moment, resources available to foster tremendous change. This is this year, next year, maybe longer, maybe not, but the time is now. And that certainly refers to everything we have to do for social justice, racial justice, but also justice for people with disabilities. As I said, I'll do a quick description. So again, my name is Bill de Blasio. I've had the honor of being mayor of New York City for one more year, my 8th year in office. I happen to be very tall, 6'5½". I am a white man with brown eyes, salt and pepper hair, and I do not wear glasses. And today I'm wearing a gray suit with a light blue shirt, a navy blue tie, and light blue diagonal stripes. I'm here at City Hall in New York City, in what's called our governor's room. And behind me, we have alternating American and New York City flags as the backdrop. And I want to tell you, I appreciate all my colleagues, but I have a special bond with Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago because, as we used to say when I was growing up, she tells it like it is, which I find both endearing and necessary at this moment in history. And you will have the honor of hearing from her shortly. And I think she's dealing with one of the most challenging situations in America, but doing it in a way that will be transformative. No matter how much is thrown at you, Lori, I don't know what you eat for breakfast, but keep eating it. Because you're always finding a way to make an impact, which I appreciate. And after I say my remarks, I'm going to turn also after Mayor Lightfoot speaks to someone who's done amazing work here in New York City, our Commissioner Victor Calisi, and I'll introduce him at the time. And just hearing his energy is always a treat and an inspiration. But here's what I'll say quickly. No one on this gathering needs to be convinced about disparities, but we can at least say that COVID was a wake-up call, a different kind of wake-up call for this nation. I think it's fair to say a lot of people who didn't like to talk about the disparities now either understand them better or have to talk about them. And some who recognize them but didn't get motivated to act are now in the fray, trying to make things different and better. So this is a great moment to try new things and push the envelope, see how far we can get. Here in this city, we're of course focused on recovery.
Hello,
I think his
Brian?
screen froze.
Bernzy?
Yeah, I believe his connection is frozen. If he's not coming back, maybe Mayor Lightfoot, we can go to your remarks.
I followed Tom Cochran's lead. So Tom, what would you like to do? I think he just went off and maybe he's coming. Why don't we give it a second to see if Bill Dale's back in?
Yep, sounds good.
But if not, I'm happy to, here he comes.
Yeah, he's coming back on.
He's gonna come back. Let's wait for him. Hello,
He's connecting.
good. Stuff happens in this digital Zoom world we live in. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. So how we doing, Bernzy?
We're still waiting for him to connect in. He does not have his video or audio connected yet.
New York staff on the line.
Do you want me to go ahead and jump in, Tom?
I think we might. I mean, he'll
Yes,
come back soon.
This is Ariana from New York City. If you could move to Mayor Lightfoot. Mayor
Thank you
Blunt.
very much, Ariana. Thank you. Mayor Lightfoot, Mayor of Chicago.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Always great to be in a gathering of friends, but more importantly, people who are committed to social justice and really focusing on issues of equity. I am the mayor of the great city of Chicago. I'm a Black woman, also a member of the LGBTQ community. And I am not, unlike my friend Bill de Blasio, I'm 5'1". So we always make a study in contrast when Bill and I are together, but we're like-minded on a number of other things. Let me finish my description. I'm wearing a gray and black striped suit with a black blouse. I'm wearing glasses. I have a short natural haircut. And Bill said his hair is salt and pepper. I'm going to tell the truth and say now mine is mostly gray.
I feel like I'm at the Oscars and we're talking about what everybody's wearing tonight.
That's true. That's true. So on behalf of the city of Chicago, I'm thrilled to be a partner with the Empowered Cities Initiative and working closely with Mayor de Blasio and others through our network of national leaders on municipal disability issues and address longstanding equity issues that have really been exacerbated by COVID. And I just want to center my remarks in personal. Some of you know that my father was a deaf man. He lost his hearing when he was in his early 20s following a lengthy period of illness where doctors had given him up for dead and told my mom that she shouldn't waste money on medicine. So this is in the 1950s before I was born. My entire life, not only did my father work his tail off in our working class family, holding 2 and 3 jobs to keep us afloat, but I saw him struggle not only to fit in the outside hearing world, but struggle even within our own family circle, within our church, because as he was coming up and then learning to live with his disability, he was not taught sign language. He read lips and we wrote lots and lots of notes, and I cherish the notebooks that I've saved from our conversations over the years. But as a Black man with a high school degree, growing up in the racist Jim Crow South, and then losing his hearing at such an early age in the 1950s, his whole life was about struggle and about trying to fit in. And absolutely, my father's struggle has fueled me and my desire to right some historic wrongs in my time as mayor. And as Bill said, and he's right, this is truly, in my mind, a key inflection moment for a number of things, thinking about the life that we want to build for residents in our cities going forward. We didn't just push pause on 2019. We changed and had to pivot and adapt to a new life, a new sense of sensibilities. And one of those is not shy away from taking on the tough challenges that we all need to face. And part of that has to be making sure that members of the disability community have multiple seats at the table of power, not peeking into the room and hoping that somebody hears their cry, but actually having a real seat at the table. I'm proud to acknowledge Rachel Arfa, who is the head of our mayor's office for people with disabilities. She's, I don't even think yet a year in the job, but it's challenging all of us to think bolder and bigger about a number of things that we should be doing, not only to be compliant with federal law, but to make sure that when we talk about equity, that the equity equation also includes people with disabilities, not just race, not just ethnicity, not just income status, and a lot of other things that are the conversation at the national level, but also making sure that we are focused on everyone in our city who has a range of different disabilities and living up to our obligation to make sure that they too are able to realize their God-given talents. And so I thank Rachel and her team, Laura Dittman, who's also been a longtime stalwart of that office. And let me talk to you a little bit about what we're trying to do here in Chicago. You can really look across our city and see the work of, we call it MOPD, the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, our train stations, bus stations, intersection, our housing policies, public services, employee rights, and minimum wage, and especially our emergency preparedness, COVID-19 response and recovery, and our vaccine strategies. Rachel and her team have put their imprint on all the things that we're doing that are front-facing, serving members of the public, and making sure that the disability community is not excluded from the recovery and response to COVID-19, but also the economic recovery that is going to fuel our cities going forward. Because of our office, we are able, and more work to do, but we're creating a safer and more accessible Chicago. And we intend to take full advantage of the opportunities that a program and initiative like Empowered Cities gives us, along with other mayors and cities across the country. And Bill, since you're back on, let me say publicly, I'm very proud of the work that you've done. I've been inspired from the minute you ran, and really talking about and raising levels of consciousness around equity and inclusion that I've never heard mayors talk about before. So God bless you for everything you've done. New York is absolutely the better for it, because your leadership, your focus on the things that I think really empower people. And I want to thank you for launching this important initiative. We got one more year as mayors together, and I intend to make sure that I do my part to make sure that your legacy is long lasting, because you've laid the foundation on which many of us have created programs and initiatives, and we're always looking to what New York is doing because of you and your team and your leadership. And in the disability rights space, that is certainly true. So let me just talk about a couple of other things, and then I'll yield the floor. I want to say that because of the grant that we were able to obtain from this initiative, we've been able to do a number of things, and I want to talk about those. First, encouraging economic development through entrepreneurship. That's critically important. Being able to chart your own future and making sure that folks with disabilities are able to participate in the entrepreneurial class in our city is very important. Promoting comprehensive job training and placement services, facilitating greater communication with students in higher education, and examining the City of Chicago policies that may promote or inhibit people with disabilities. And we've been doing a top to bottom review of those issues, and again, led by our great commissioner, Rachel Arfa. And further, our Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities allows us to look citywide and find ways to integrate new policies with other city departments and initiatives. For example, MOPD is working very closely with our Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection and our Department of Procurement Services to hold webinars and virtual outreach sessions on certification for business enterprise programs for people with disabilities. This is a critical part of our recovery. This has historically had very low participation due to the lack of awareness and incentives to business owners. We're changing that around. MOPD is also helping to expand access and improve career pathways as it works with our city colleges in our public schools to help foster better communication and eliminate barriers for transition age students with disabilities. And on top of that, MOPD is working with our first ever Office of Equity and Racial Justice and our Department of Human Resources to implement city resource groups, one of the first efforts of its kind to focus on employees with disabilities or allies in the disabled community. All of these efforts mean we are creating strong information campaign to build trust and encourage people across a lot of different city departments and also outside of city department to join forces with us to build a much more inclusive workplace. These are some of the things that we are doing here in Chicago, fueled and excited by this initiative started by Mayor de Blasio. And again, it's just our great honor to be in partnership with you and to really think creatively about ways that we can push and do more. and make sure that people living with disabilities, whether it's hearing, whether it's visual, whether it's physical, or a combination of many things, that we are creating an environment in the city of Chicago where people can live rich, fulfilled lives. And really, as I said, fulfill their God-given talent and breaking down the barriers that we've erected or otherwise allowed to exist. So I'm proud of the work that we're doing and proud to be in partnership with all of you. So thank you.
I guess
So are you back on?
Yeah, I'm back on, and I want to say to Mayor Lori Lightfoot, first of all, I'm going to update my physical description by saying, based on the very, very kind things you said about me and my team, that I am now a white man who is blushing. So thank you. You are extremely kind what you said, and I want to return the point and the favor and say, just this is all about how we help each other find what's possible. And that's been part of what's amazing in general about the work of mayors. We're always inspiring each other. We're always, we don't steal ideas from each other. We gently borrow them. And it's been a wonderful partnership with you. And yes, we're going to make it a great year. But I'll just pick up where I was before. I'm sorry I got cut off. I was just amplifying a phrase that we use around here, and we really try to use it to ground us, which is we talk about our recovery from COVID, and we say a recovery for all of us, because we do not want to mistake that for a traditional recovery. Laura, you'll appreciate when the pandemic first hit, there were some folks, let's just gently call them members of the larger business community, who had a very particular concept for what a recovery was. And shockingly, that recovery seemed to refer quite a bit to the larger business community. So we said, no, wait a minute, recovery has to reach everyone. It has to address the inequalities that have been laid bare, and it also has to be transformative because it is a reset. It should not be, hey, let's just get that status quo right back in place. It has to be a sense of, we will go much farther than where we were before. The crisis opened the door to something transformative. So we say a recovery for all of us to keep us centered on that notion. And as we all work together, we constantly want to ask the question, what is the next thing we can do? And I appreciated, I could hear it in Lori's voice, that constant searching. And I think this is, again, part of why you've been really successful in inspiring people, because everyone can hear you're searching for the next way to do good. I would say from a New York City perspective, we've certainly learned by taking the empowered NYC approach, and first as a pilot program and trying it and seeing how far we could go with it. And we found something very powerful. First, that we could just reach a tremendous number of people. To date, over 26,000 people that we've been able to have some impact on through this approach. Specifically in the area of jobs, our NYC at Work program, we've reached hundreds of people and gotten them quality employment. For a lot of other people, it's helped with affordable housing, where we have an important preference system related to folks with disabilities. It's been healthcare, especially at this moment in history, home care, different pieces we've been able to help connect people to by really trying to constantly work on how we make the information accessible and how we make it easy for people to connect. Also, in terms of employment, I think all of us understand this, but we got to keep reminding ourselves that the best way to model for the private sector that they should be more aggressive and inclusive in hiring people with disabilities. The best way to achieve that is to model good behavior in the public sector and do the hiring ourselves. And we are the largest employer in this city. We have been focused, a little bit of physician heal thyself. We have been focused on how much more the city government can do to hire people with disabilities. And we are certainly not all the way there yet, as Victor will always remind me, but we are trying to use our own tools much more fully. I think if every city in America did that, and then we got our friends in county government and state government to do the same, it would be transcendent unto itself. This is a tool we all hold in our hands right now that we can do a lot more with. So I think the partnership is powerful because it's not just good ideas and borrowing from each other, but it's also continually raising the bar for each other in a productive way. And I think the work we'll do together is going to be lasting, and that's why we want to codify it in a sense and deepen it with what we're launching today with the Empowered Cities website. We want a tool that will allow this extraordinary coalition of cities to work together more consistently. We think the website that's been created is going to be really effective in allowing us to do that. We want common cause, and having a sort of central point that we can all refer to for what we need to focus on in terms of the national agenda is also important, because it's a time where amazing things are happening at the federal level and even down to the state level for different cities to combine their efforts to have a maximum impact on their state governments. So we think this will be a real important hub for connection and for taking the things we are talking about here, putting them into action. I would only conclude with this, that I'm going to give you a little vignette I love to go back to a lot because it reminds me of my dissolute youth, and but also something I try to bring to every discussion in government of what we can achieve. I think there's a problem. We all experience it with bureaucracies. Bureaucracies have a peerless ability to tell us what we can't do and limit our field of vision, when in fact, there's so much more that can be achieved. We have oftentimes a lot more power than we realize. And we spend, I think, as leaders in government, we spend a lot of the day trying to stop people from talking us out of our own power. The vignette I offer is that when I was young and I went to New York University for college, there was this kind of honky-tonk Texas bar in Greenwich Village. It's called the Lone Star Cafe. And it was very notable because it was in the middle of an area that was supposed to be maybe a little elite. The Lone Star Cafe had a massive replica of an iguana on top of its building that sort of dominated the skyline in that area. And then they had their slogan, which is the thing I really want to refer to. And their slogan was, "Too much ain't enough." And that is, it has animated me many times since then. And I think in the many conversations I've had about how we expand opportunity for people with disabilities, I think it's just pushing the spectrum all the time. I think there's so much more out there. And if anyone says we've gone far enough, it's implicitly not true. And, this is a great example of aim high, because there's so much more out there that can be reached. And that's a perfect segue to introducing Victor Khaleesi, who is someone who I've just enjoyed every time we meet, every time we conspire together. I've enjoyed it because he has only one speed, which is forward, and tremendous energy and hope in all he does. And, there are some people who are activists and come into government and can't figure out how to be in government. And then there's some people in government who never, ever, ever thought like an activist. Victor's quite exceptional because he thinks like an activist, but he actually knows how to make government work. And for that reason, he's become nationally renowned, even internationally, as someone who's built, innovation and new approaches that really do work and that folks are so anxious to borrow and act on. So Victor, I'm so thankful for everything you've done for the people in New York City, and I'm so thankful that your ideas are being picked up on in so many other places. I'm going to turn it over to you now, and all I ask is, after I say all these nice things about you, don't screw it up, okay? It's I just put you on a big pedestal here, brother, so just make sure you live up to that really, I mean, you're actually, his mother did write the introduction. I should note that. She sent it over to me this morning.
Mr. Mayor, he's going to do okay. He's going to do
He's
okay.
gonna be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can feel it. I can feel
You
it.
can feel it coming on. Okay, he's pumping up now. It's like pre, backstage before the concert. He's pumping up.
He's going to be all right.
He's gonna be
Big time.
okay. Victor, everyone, thank you. Keep doing the great work you're doing. And Victor, we're in good hands with you. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor de Blasio. I'm going to tell my mom about that, and she's going to make sure she makes you some good eggplant parmesan again. So we'll certainly get that to you. But most of all, Mayor de Blasio, thank you so much for your leadership and trusting me to run your office and allowing me to be the advocate inside city government to get things done. My successes are built on you. So thank you and your administration for letting me move forward. And thank you, Tom Cochran, as well, for allowing us to be here today. And Mayor Lightfoot, it was a pleasure to meet you virtually, and I look forward to meeting you sometime in the future. I want to say good afternoon, everyone. And I am joined by my colleagues, Rachel Arfa, Commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities in Chicago, and Kristen Mckaush, Disability Commissioner of the Mayor's Office, the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities in Boston. And to ensure that this webinar is accessible for all attendees, I'm going to start off with a brief description of myself. I am a white male wearing glasses with salt and pepper hair. I'm wearing a blue suit with a pin, a white shirt, and a yellow tie with white and blue flowers. Behind me is a beige wall with some plaques and a map behind me. And I began my career in city government as an ADA coordinator for New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, really looking to make parks go beyond in their codes and standards for accessibility. And I became commissioner of Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities under the Bloomberg administration. And Mayor de Blasio appointed me for the last 8 years to really drive his disability agenda and really bring equity to people with disabilities. And we made lots of great strides here. And I understand from my personal experience, the complex challenges that people with disabilities face every day. It's my job to help nearly 1 million people who self-identify as living with one or more disabilities access opportunities and services to everyone who is a New Yorker. And my office and I work to make New York City the most accessible city in the world. And I encourage each and every one of you to hop on board and become that accessible city as well. And we focus on many issues and policy areas that we'll be discussing today, including employment and accessible city services, as well as transportation and affordable housing. And before I move on, I just want to thank Martha Jackson, who heads up our NYC at Work, our financial, our empowered New York City, empowered cities approach, and everything that makes employment move forward. Without her leadership, we are not here today. And the NYC at Work staff who supports her and in organizing this today. So thank you. I'm going to give you a round of applause. And now I want to turn it over to one of my great cities here in the US, Commissioner Arfa. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kadashi, for that. So hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Arfa, and I'm the Commissioner for the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities here in Chicago. I'm going to provide a visual description. So I am a white woman, and I have shorter than brown hair and hazel eyes. And I wear a navy blue dress with a black blazer, and I'm in my city hall office. And behind me is a bookshelf with different books on it, different items. It is such a pleasure to be here with my fellow commissioners to work together with others. I also want to share that I am proudly deaf, in the South, they can have even though I went to 18 years in speech therapy, I have my deaf accent. So feel free to ask me to repeat myself if you need me to. It is not hurt my feelings. Today we have other accessibility. So we have American Sign Language interpreters provided by Jen Idiodrum. We also have a captioner then, so you can access the captioning by clicking on the live transcript button. So we really try to make everything we do accessible. So as Mayor Lightfoot mentioned, so I was appointed commissioner by Mayor Lightfoot in July of last year. And let me tell you, it's quite a fine, sturdy good job in the middle of the pandemic. It makes it easier because you don't know what happened before because the world is already turned upside down. So we made my learning curve a bit easier, but even more importantly, it makes it easier to advance how we do things because people are already used to a way of life being disrupted. And I'm really glad that we've been able to do that, including chopping out the COVID-19 response and vaccine distribution. But it also did not stop us from continuing to provide services to Chicagoans with disabilities. The areas that we work on. So, but one thing that I would say is that it's been so great to step into this role and have the support of my fellow commissioners of Commissioner Policy, but that also Commissioner Kristen Mckaush from Boston. We face so many of the same issues. We have these monthly meetings. It's for a while we were meeting every 2 weeks. And these meetings were coordinated by the Deputy Commissioner Kristen Mckaush, who did in stellar job coordinated the many different issues that were coming up too. And these meetings allow us to really learn from each other and to borrow as the means of borrow different strategies, but also figure out what works in a city. So I will do this work alone. I have a stellar team here in Chicago, but then I got to reach out to each one of you. And so I'm so proud to turn this over to Commissioner Mckaush from the Boston to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Kristen Mckaush, and I'm the Disability Commissioner for the City of Boston. I am a white female. I have blonde hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a white sweater. My background is an image of Boston City Hall. So I would like to thank everybody for this opportunity to be here, especially my fellow commissioners and all the mayors and their staffs from across the country. I serve under Mayor Kim Janey. She is new to the position. Many of you may know that our former mayor, Martin Walsh, was appointed as the Secretary of Labor under President Joe Biden. So Mayor Janey is new to her role, but she was president of the Boston City Council, and she's done a lot of great work, in particular for people with disabilities. She sends her apologies for not being here, but hopefully I can do a good job in representing her and the work that we do in the city of Boston. I also have a very strong Boston accent as a lifelong Bostonian, so please feel free to ask me to repeat anything as well. So my role in the city is I lead the city's collective efforts towards accessibility and inclusion. And I really work on this in a systemic method. I work with all the other departments in the city of Boston to make sure that everything they do includes accessibility and inclusion of people with disabilities. I work closely with our public works department, transportation, the schools, Boston Centers for Youth and Family, all the health and human service departments, Boston Public Health Commission, Age Strong, which is formerly the Elderly Commission. And we make sure that we all collectively look at accessibility from a programmatic level and also a physical level. All our streets and sidewalks, we use the complete streets method, which I'm sure a lot of other cities do. I know a lot of other cities do as well. And we work to create best practices among all our cities' departments' work. And I really want to stress to the mayors and the policymakers on this call that it's so important to have that disability lens at a high level. I serve to provide information and direction to the mayor and her administration. I work as a spokesperson on all issues of disability and really use that lens to ensure that everything we do doesn't just meet compliance, as Mayor Lightfoot suggested earlier, but we work on what we call ideal accessibility, which is all the little things that you may not think of. Like if for a built environment, for example, instead of having a set of stairs and a ramp next to it, we would recommend that it's a flush entry so everybody can enter a building together. So that's just a small example of one of the things we do, which architects and designers may not think of, but it really sends the subtle message that everyone is equal and are able to enjoy things together on an equal footing. So that's just a small bit of information about me, and I'll talk more about our programs in Boston when we get to that piece of the agenda. But for now, I would like to turn it back over to Commissioner Khaleesi.
Thank you, Commissioner Mckaush. I appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Arfa. It's great to have Chicago and Boston here, two great cities. So it's exciting, right? This is really exciting to really talk to you about this new multi-city initiative called Empowered Cities. People with disabilities have always faced tremendous barriers to financial security. And here's some numbers. More than a quarter of people with disabilities in the United States live in poverty. And 2/3 of adults with disabilities are out of work. So Empowered Cities is a roadmap to inclusion and equity. This initiative is a collaboration co-chaired by the Office of Disability of Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City. And our officers were working to advance inclusion long before this collaboration by addressing access to city services, healthcare, transportation, and policy areas. And we established Empowered Cities in 2019 to focus on 3 interrelated pillars that form the systematic roots of economic equality for people with disabilities. And those are financial empowerment, accessible, affordable housing, and I want to stress that accessible and the affordable housing because it needs to happen, and employment of people with disabilities. COVID-19 has really ripped apart our country, our world, and has made the goal of advancing equity for people with disabilities really, really, really more important than ever before. And we are building this national network led by people with disabilities of city municipal leaders to foster collaboration, share best practices, challenge each other, like Mayor Lightfoot said, and improve and innovate programs by lightly stealing from other cities. And more importantly, to build and advocate for inclusive policies, not only here in our cities, but across the United States that have repercussions around the world. And the newly created Empowered Cities website is certainly a way for us to share the best practices on our roadmap to inclusion. It's a tool for everyone to join the movement and a vehicle to raise our collective voices. And here in New York City, we've responded to the compounding needs of the disability community over this really interesting last year. And beginning in March of 2020, our office convened weekly calls, Zoom calls, obviously, and physical phone calls because not everyone has access to the internet, with our nonprofit partners, advocates, the disability community at large to share public health updates and resources and respond to questions and concerns in real time. And we help coordinate free food delivery services because there was so much food insecurity throughout our city, as well as your own. And we certainly made sure that people had protective equipment. We knew that people with disabilities have underlying conditions and needed those masks, those gloves, those face shields, those gowns, and we delivered them to them. So their healthcare provider and their people that come into their homes to help them for their activities of daily living had the protective equipment for themselves to keep safe and be able to help them. And we made sure that people who are deaf and hard of hearing had access to clear masks so they could coordinate with others and be able to communicate. And additionally, we served as a liaison between the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the Emergency Management Department here regarding accessibility at vaccine sites. Now, my colleagues from Chicago, Commissioner Arfa, will now tell you more about how our cities responded to the pandemic. Commissioner Arfa?
Thank you, Commissioner Mckaush. So just as you said, the COVID-19 pandemic has really exposed so many of these areas, especially the areas of public health. Is we MOPD was in a unique position in being able to advocate and assure accessibility throughout COVID-19, including when COVID-19 testing became available. We worked to make sure that it was accessible to people with disabilities, including coordinating with peer transit, so that people with disabilities do not have transportation barriers to access testing. And then as the vaccine rollout arrived here, we did several weeks. We had a large site at United Center, and we worked to make sure that we have we worked to make sure that it was physically accessible, but also that any communication access needs will be provided for clinics using both outside language interpreter, but also video remote interpreting, making sure the materials were available in alternate formats, including Braille and electronic formats. And then we also created a social story that was created by one of my staff members, Gerard Lockhart, to help people with intellectual and developmental disabilities really have access to understand the vaccine process, and to be as prepared as possible as they can be. Then we also worked with 19 different disability organizations across Chicago to help make vaccine employment accessible by working with them to give them different blocks of vaccine employment so that they could do that with the individuals who they are in contact with. And that we also always kept the doors open in terms of community engagement. If we have a disability vaccine working group, that means about every 2 weeks. So we're always learning about what different barriers there may be, and working together across departments to resolve those. So we will work with our Department of Public Health and Office of Emergency Management, and then the mayor's office was our collaboration, but we're able to bring in our expertise and our relationship with the disability community to help make sure that the solutions we provide solve the barriers that are out there. And I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Mckaush to share about all the great work at Boston too.
Thank you, Commissioner Arfa. One thing I didn't get to tell people when I did my introduction was that I also use a wheelchair. Nobody can see that on the my screen, but I do use a wheelchair, so I have lived experience in the work that I do. So thank you, Commissioner Arfa, for talking about the accessibility of vaccination sites. We work together, we all share best practices, and we did also address vaccination sites. We provided portable ramps for the sites that had one step in the back entrance. We also were able to secure ASL interpreters for the sites and for emergency press conferences. At the time, it was Mayor Walsh when COVID first hit, and he went from doing a press conference maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks to literally doing one every day, as many of you did across the country, I know. So we worked really hard to ensure that we had ASL, American Sign Language interpreters, at every press conference. And this took a lot of work because, like I said, we weren't used to it. And we also noticed that there was a shortage of qualified interpreters. To do a public event like a press conference, it takes a skill set and also confidence of the interpreters, because they know that it will live on. It's very important information. It will be recorded, and they just have to really be prepared for that. So we didn't have a large group of interpreters who were ready to take this step. So what we did was we developed a training program, a mentoring program. We provided funding through Empowered Cities initiative from city to train new ASL interpreters. They were already qualified interpreters, but we allowed them to come to the press conferences and be mentored and learn the basic skill set that's required. And it also helped them build confidence. So we did this we were able to provide ASL at 100% of the mayor's conferences through the first year. So we were really excited about that. And at the same time, we're developing a whole new group of interpreters who can do this. So it was really a pipeline program. And another piece of another pipeline program that we worked on regarding employment was what we call the on-the-job experience pipeline program. So unemployment figures for the city of Boston are really staggering. We know that 76% of Boston residents with disabilities were jobless. That's similar to the national rate. So even before COVID upended the employment market, more than 2/3 of working age people with disabilities were unemployed or underemployed nationally. People with disabilities are the country's largest untapped talent pool. So in response, Empowered Cities leaders have undertaken an initiative to connect constituents with meaningful employment, identify new training pathways, and support businesses in implementing inclusive hiring practices. The pipeline program that I mentioned earlier, the on-the-job experience pipeline program, we call it OJEP. We work with the state's folk rehab agency, the Mass Rehab Commission, to create a pipeline to public sector jobs for Boston residents with disabilities. Like Mayor de Blasio mentioned earlier, we really need to be a model employer so that people in the private sector can see that not only is it something that you can do, it's something that we should do. And it's a really large pool of talented people who have been left on the sidelines. So what we do is we bring in 10 Boston residents with disabilities into City Hall every year. We connect them with a 6-week paid job training program where they can use their skills to show employers in different city departments their abilities. And many of them already have college degrees, some of them don't, but they're all looking to get back into the workforce. And really just giving them that foot in the door gives them the opportunity to show their talents and abilities and figure out what they would like to do. In turn, it gives city managers, department head managers, the opportunity to get to know them and really see that people with disabilities are just as qualified, sometimes even more qualified than other people who they may be considering for a role. So through this job, the OJEP pipeline program, we've been able to give hundreds of Boston residents with disabilities the opportunity to be employed by the city. We're really excited about it, and we're happy to be a model employer to showcase that people with disabilities can do the job. So with that, I will turn it back over to Commissioner Calise.
Thank you, Kristen. You can see a theme happening here, right? We're talking about access to communication, where via sign language, video remote interpreting, accessibility of vaccination sites, employment and job training. All of this stuff is just really exciting to hear. And as cities are pushing forward, this is what needs to happen. This is what we're talking about, full inclusion of people with disabilities. And in 2017, we established the NYC at Work program. And you heard Mayor de Blasio mention it earlier. It's a business-driven, person-centered workforce development program. Staff members, the NYC at Work team, pre-screen and connect New Yorkers with disabilities to internships and job opportunities with established business partners in the public and, of course, the private sectors. And prior to the pandemic, over 650 active job seekers were enrolled at different stages of the process, and nearly 400 have been connected to employment in high growth sectors. And I often like to say these jobs were real jobs with real pay and real benefits. And our NYC at Work serves as a recruitment for 55A, the diversity hiring program that allows qualified New Yorkers with disabilities to access city government jobs, right? are levers that we're able to use with, and these job seekers do not have to take a civil service exam. So it allows them to get in the door. And currently 378 employees throughout city government are participating in 55A. Now, I just want to throw some numbers at you. I might do this from time to time. In 2017 and in 2018, 4 candidates were hired each year, right? That's a total, that's not much at all. Now, in 2019, when we were involved, people that knew people with disabilities knew how, what their needs and concerns, what their reasonable accommodations were, and wrapping that all together. The NYC at Work team was the recruitment resource, and we hired 80 individuals who were offered full-time employment through 55A. So when you have people with disabilities leading the charge, things work. And in response to a lot of things that are happening right now in our digital age, as I talk to you, is a lack of access to accessible technology. To technology as a whole, Wi-Fi, and digital skills, which is digital literacy. So our NYC at Work program has launched a new bridge to really tackle that digital divide, and it's called Connectability. And job seekers will be selected that come through our NYC at Work program to receive a personal laptop and access to digital skill trainings based on their career goals. And following the pilot, we hope to get and replicate this. Obviously, it's all based on funding as well, to replicate this project with other empowered cities. Now, Commissioner Arfa, I know you're doing a lot in Chicago's Mayor Lightfoot laid out. That's our healthy competition that we have between each other. But can you tell me what's happening for employment for people with disabilities in Chicago?
Absolutely, Commissioner Kadishi, collaboration is good and competition is always good, whatever gets us to the finish line. But, so one of the things that happening at the employment front here in Chicago is that in 2019, me and I put into the budget of making it illegal to operate a 2C sub-minimum wage workshops in the city of Chicago. So that means that sub-minimum wage is not going to be allowed in the city of Chicago after 2024. So if you're not familiar with that one, the Department of Labor created this exception of 14C to allow businesses to pay people with disabilities piecemeal wages rather than minimum wage and competitive employment. So this was so reportedly saying that people with disabilities deserve to make at least minimum wage in competitive employment opportunities. No exceptions here. So we are focusing our efforts on supporting organizations making that transition from sub-minimum wage to competitive employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Yes, some of them during the pandemic have decided to take the pandemic opportunity and stop operating shelter workshops and now moving towards competitive employment. So that is hope. This a little bit, if you are focusing our efforts at that between now and 2024, so that we meet this deadline. And then another big thing that we've done here in Chicago is that we copied an employment task force that made a number of recommendations, which you've heard about from me and Lightfoot, and we are now in the process of implementing it through empowered cities. We doing hire a temporary employee and Kristen, who is also working with us on some of these initiatives. So some of the initiatives are building up our business enterprise for people with disabilities, to recognize businesses owned by people with disabilities, working with our Department of Procurement Services to expand that value and opportunities, and also working on strategies to increase disability employment here at the city of Chicago. Some of those include setting up a disability resource, city resource group for employees with disabilities to connect them. And then we hope that that will also foster an environment where people feel comfortable disclosing their disability, because as many of you know, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you do not have to disclose your disability, which can make it difficult to track the number of people with disabilities in your workforce. So we want to create that positive disability identity. And that is certainly helped by having a mayor who identifies and has such a strong connection to disability, but that also doing what we can citywide to create that positive association around disability. And then we're also working on screening on job applications to make sure they are not requirements that have nothing to do with the job, that may be unintentionally screening out people with disabilities and preventing them from being considered or applying for those jobs. So we want to make sure to update all of them. And then we've also been working in partnership with the city and city colleges in Chicago to increase those opportunities for students with disabilities, so then they can find connect to employment opportunities. So now I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Mckaush.
Thank you, Commissioner Arfa. To follow up on what you said and what Commissioner Khaleesi said, we also work on financial empowerment for persons with disabilities. We know this is one of the biggest sectors where persons with disabilities are left behind. And there are many reasons for that, from losing benefits to, like Commissioner Arfa talked about, do you identify as a person with a disability? There's a fear that if you do identify, that will be held against you. So we do a lot of work on financial empowerment. And one of the programs that we're really focusing on right now is in collaboration with the Boston Public Schools. So we're working with the special education department to provide financial education, training, and practical tools to students with developmental disabilities aged 18 to 24. We know this group, which is called transition age students, face a lot of challenges in their next step after high school. Families and students go from a whole system of support and services in the public schools and in high school to basically falling off a cliff when they get out of high school. There isn't anybody to really tell them. There's no one specific agency to say, okay, this is the next step. So families are really left to figure it out on their own. And when this comes to things like benefits, it's really complicated and confusing. So what we do is we are working with students and families aged 18 to 24 as they plan their next steps after high school. We help them with setting up their own financial goals according to their personal needs and ambitions. We train them on budgeting, saving, checking accounts, credit, and predatory behavior, which we know is on the rise. We tell them information about the ABLE account, which allows them to save money and not lose benefits, SSI, Medicaid, and ways to maintain these benefits while they go to work. We also offer a stipend to open a savings or checking account, depending on their personal goals. And it's really exciting because, like we said, it really gives them a pathway forward after high school, so they don't just fall off a cliff and maybe never even think about going to work or not having an opportunity to actually get a job. And several of these students, actually many of these students, have participated in our OJEP program and gotten jobs with the city of Boston. So it's great how these programs work hand in hand, and we're really excited about it. Other cities in Massachusetts have also replicated our programs. So we see it spreading across the Commonwealth. And on our calls every month with the disability commissioners from across the country, we all share examples of our programs in hopes that they will be replicated in other cities across the country as well. So with that, I would like to say that we've just shared a very small slice of our collective work here today. And we encourage you all to visit our website, which is being debuted, empoweredcities.org, to learn more about our efforts and respond to the COVID-19 crisis. We're working also to advance equity and financial empowerment, increase employment and access to affordable housing. The Empowered City site offers many resources and best practices for cities like yours, and it's the easiest way to connect with us. You can just simply complete the form on the Join Us page to get on the road to inclusion and join our movement to raise our collective voice by connecting with empowered cities. With that, I will turn it back over to Commissioner Khaleesi.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything here. And you're right, everyone, you really heard a lot of things, right? You're talking about employment. We're talking about we're talking about minimum wage being raised. We're talking about making sure kids with disabilities don't fall off cliffs and have access to things. I mean, these are really important initiatives, and to realize that disability really intersects with race, gender, LGBTQ plus, all of it. It's there, right? And we have to ensure that disability is incorporated. I know we have a hard stop in about 5 minutes. And I just going to throw out is, does anybody have any questions for us? Because I know we got a stop in 5 minutes.
Victor, let me just say that this is what the United States Conference of Mayors is all about. You know, we build highways, we build buildings, we do a lot of things. But the social issues of this nation is what the United States Conference of Mayors is our heart. We went through the civil rights struggle, we went through the ERA, we went through the AIDS epidemic, we went through same-sex marriage. So sometimes it's not the hardware, it's not what you build, it has to do with the people in our cities. And so I really appreciate the work that you and Rachel and others are doing in this effort, along with our 2 mayors and the other 3 mayors. So let's continue to talk about this, because when you're in trouble, you come to a city. You don't stay in a rural area. When you need help, you come to a city. And so it is natural in the United States, because in the rural areas, hello, you know what I'm saying? So we appreciate so much this discussion. And I want you to know that this is a culture and this is a heritage of the United States Conference of Mayors to continue to amplify the issues that we've been talking about today. So thank you, Victor, very much.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate your leadership on this. We look forward to a conversation in September, because we're going to hold you to that. And it's such a pleasure to be here. We encourage everyone to look to start some offices. We can help you. Look to include people with disabilities in everything you offer. We're here to help. We built a big initiative. We're mirroring United States Conference of Mayors to really mimic what you guys are doing, right? And have those disability offices there. We want to start these empowered cities programs. We're here to help. Sign up, be part of the initiative, and thank you for everything.